G'day from Croatia's beautiful Adriatic coast. I'm Kim Illman with a croaky voice talking about the cars that the F1 drivers drove to the Hungaroring in the last race. Are you ready? Let's get started. First up, let me say I'm amazed at how much interest you have in the cars that the drivers drive to the track. In fact, the first video I did on this topic was back in Bahrain, and that's had more than 250,000 views. So let's get stuck into the Hungaroring cars, and I must say that the Hungaroring is a bit of a gift for me because every driver gets an undercover car park with their name in their car park. So if I happen to miss a driver coming in, it doesn't matter. All I do is walk down this row of cars and see every one of their names above their car slot. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what 19 of the drivers drove in. Which driver did I not get? You'll have to stay to watch till the end. Let's start off with our current world champion, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis actually arrived in one vehicle and on one bike. The vehicle, it was this Mercedes EQC. This is an electric vehicle, an SUV, a sizable car, and he came in on 3 of the days in that, but he never drives. Angela drives that car, drops him off at the entrance to the swipe gates, and he nips into the paddock. And on one day, he arrived on his motorcycle, his MV Agusto LH44 Brutale. I often photograph him riding this bike in, and on this particular day, he had Angela Cullen on the back, as he often does. His teammate Valtteri Bottas also came in a Mercedes SUV. Now, both he and Lewis were staying in motorhomes at the track, so their drive wasn't terribly long, and those motorhomes are parked a little bit further away from the paddock than they normally are at other races. And on one day, Valtteri and Lewis arrived at pretty much the same time, and that resulted in the media having to pick which one to go for, Lewis or Valtteri. And obviously Lewis is the bigger name, so he got most of the audience, but here you can see he's just in the background of this shot. Max Verstappen, well, he came in not in an NSX, which he did at the British GP, and that created quite a stir. He was back to his normal white Honda Civic Type R, as was Sergio Perez, who also last race in Britain came in an NSX, which we believe, and certainly Sergio believes, was Ayrton Senna's old car. Max and Sergio were staying in town and needed a car. It's about a 25-minute drive out to the Hungaroring. They were both staying at the Kempinski Hotel. Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris were over at the Hilton, and if you follow their social media channels, you probably would have picked up on that. And at this point, I should say that all of the drivers need a special pass on their front windscreen to get into this particular car park. Only the drivers and a couple of the head honchos of F1 get spots undercover. Everyone else has to park out in a general car parking area, but it's still close to the swipe gates that go underneath the track to get into the paddock. Daniel Ricciardo, who last race came in a McLaren, was back to a somewhat more suburban car, a VW Touareg. Black in colour, big in size, and enabling him to get all 3 of the Team Ricciardo guys into that vehicle. And his teammate Lando Norris had a rather plain Volvo, an S60. And as you can see here, Lando is passengering in here with his trainer John Malvin driving. Fernando Alonso didn't have a very long drive to the track because I believe he was staying in his motorhome there, as he often does, and he had a Renault Espace Initiale, a 7-seat French minivan. But Esteban Ocon only needed seating for 2, so he had an Alpine A110. Stick it up to look sporty. Charles Leclerc, or Charles Leclerc, was driving, I think probably, well, if you take him and Carlos both driving the same car, this is the SF90 Stradale. Now this car sells for a variety of prices around the world, but if you take the US price, just over $500,000 US, has 1,000 horsepower, and if you want the convertible, you'll add about another $60,000 US on top of that. In fact, Charles was actually behind me one day coming back from the track. I think it was race day, that's right. And it was quite interesting because when he stopped at the lights, people would obviously pull up next to him, realise it's him, and those that had anything for signing would jump out of the car, race across and ask him to sign it, and he was more than happy to do so. Carlos Sainz was driving the silver version. He was also staying at the Kempinski, and I videoed him a couple of times coming back to the hotel. And when he drove his car up that ramp, it was quite steep to get onto the driveway of the hotel. He would scrape the rubber protector underneath the car on the ground, made a terrible noise, but he was very popular coming in. And once he'd done his stuff, signing autographs and posing for selfies, a lucky hotel employee got to valet park that very expensive and impressive car. And of course with this car you can see the engine without having to lift the bonnet, or the trunk in this case. Getting caught without cash when you're on holidays can be a pain in the bum. So do what I do. Put a little bit of cash in behind your phone and never get caught short again. Sebastian Vettel driving this Aston Martin. When I say he was driving, he had the car, but he was staying at a motorhome near the track. His trainer Antti was staying at a city hotel, so Antti would drive the car in. On a couple of occasions, as we did last race, would race across thinking, oh, here comes Seb. Then Antti would get out of the car and we'd realise, no, Seb's riding his bike, which he did for the short journey. Lance Stroll, on the other hand, was driving an Aston Martin DBX, a very smooth looking car. I need to thank Canity.com too for sponsoring these videos, for without them, you wouldn't be getting them for free. Canity.com, the world's best online staff training platform. French driver Pierre Gasly was driving a blue Honda Civic Type R, and he was staying at the Ritz-Carlton next door to the Kempinski where I was staying, so I'd pop over there and video him coming back at night. And as you can see here, he was very, very popular. Once again, he would park the car on the driveway, sign autographs for many minutes and pose for selfies, and then once again, some hotel employee would get to park the car underneath. Now I can tell you that in the past, some drivers who haven't had time or had a want to go and spend any time with those particular fans that are waiting out the front, go straight underneath the hotel into the car park and go straight up in the lift, bypassing all those people. And I guess that's because they don't want to upset those that don't get an autograph or a selfie just for the sake of a few that they might be able to provide. Let's jump to George Russell. He was driving a white Mercedes C-Class sedan, while his teammate Nicholas Latifi was driving a black Mercedes GLE 300D. So that just leaves us with 4 drivers left to go, and I'll go now to Kimi Räikkönen. He has driven the same car, I think, at every single race that they've needed to drive in, and that is an Alfa Romeo Stelvio. And what typically happens with Kimi is his trainer Mark Arnold will drive the car up to the gates, let Kimi out and he ducks in so he doesn't have to run the gauntlet of the media. And because his hospitality suite and garage are down one end of the paddock, he can use the lesser used gate, and that means there are few, if any, photographers for him to endure. But on race day I went down to that far gate, and sure enough, he rolled up in his Stelvio along with his wife Mintu and his son Robin and his daughter Rihanna. And because it had just rained, Mintu was very careful not to get her dress wet. Antonio Giovinazzi, well, he often comes in on his own. He parked in his particular car park and walked into the track. He was driving an Alfa Romeo Giulia. And I think, and I'll stand corrected on this, they've driven the same coloured cars all year. That leaves us with 2 drivers, Mick Schumacher being one of them, and this is the particular car that Mick had parked in his spot. This is a Ford S-Max People Mover, sporty like saloon, yet spacious MPV. However, Mick was staying at a motorhome at the track, so he was dropped off by his people at the far gate, the same one that Kimi used. He would walk in, and once again we would hardly ever see him, except on the first day, on the Thursday, when he rode his motorcycle in, this beautiful bike which he's ridden in a couple of times this year, parked near the swipe gates, not in his car park, and walked behind all the photographers to get into the paddock. Now, normally he would park at the far end up here and he'd walk the long trek here, but that would mean probably 15 to 20 seconds of photographers snapping pictures of him, so he avoided that by parking there. And our final driver is Nikita Mazepin. He's the 20th. No idea what he was driving. That car park was blank the 3 times that I went down and shot it, but I do know he was staying at the track, so I'm going to take a guess that he was scootering in and heading into that far gate where I wasn't positioned for any more than about an hour over the whole 4 days. So who owns these cars? Well, some of them are simply rental cars from companies like Sixt or National or Enterprise, whatever. Some are provided by friends of the team. Some are provided by car enthusiasts, and very occasionally the drivers drive in their own cars. That's the definitive list of cars that the drivers were driving to the track in Hungary. If you've seen a picture you've liked here, remember that all of my pictures are available to download from prostarpics.com for personal or editorial use. You'll find a range of 24 F1 photo books at kimillman.com, along with a range of merchandise. If you've liked this video, take a quick second to hit the like button. It helps the algorithm. And if you haven't subscribed, I invite you to do that. Now, my VIP members will be happy to know that during the week I put up some more wallpapers for you. You also got last week some raw images from the Hungarian GP, which you are more than welcome to edit and use for your own personal use. They're free of charge. And you also get exclusive content that no others get. So make sure you join up as a VIP member. And for my best pictures live from the track and all during the week, head to Instagram at Kim Illman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Actually arrived in not our real so